The hosts and guests on Everything's Messy podcast are not licensed healthcare professionals. The discussions in our episodes are not personalized medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for medical guidance. Never delay seeking professional medical advice or emergency assistance because of our podcast. We encourage consulting with a healthcare professional before making any significant health changes. By listening to our podcast, you agree to the disclaimer. Thank you for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. So, joy. You got to bring more joy into your life. You should find ways to feel relief, to find ways to feel free, to find ways to feel inspired and hopeful. If your emotions are worry, if your emotions are anger and guilt and shame and any version of mad or sad, you're not going to heal in that. You only heal when you're in alignment with who you really are, when you're in a positive emotional state. And again, the bottom would be content. If you can get to content, we're good. But see, again, most people are going to say, what? Just feel better and I'm going to heal? I don't believe that. That's malarkey. I can't do that. But yeah, that's kind of like, that's really what it is. The body can heal itself and do what it's meant to do. It's built to heal you. But you have to put it in a state where it can do that. And it can't do it in stress.
Hey, welcome to Everything's Messy podcast, where we celebrate the beautiful but messy life experiences that most, if not all, people go through. Get ready to embark on an exciting journey through the raw and unfiltered stories of everyday people. Here, we dive into messy realities of life, from making messy mistakes to triumphs and everything in between. Are you sensing a theme? That's right, it's messy. But this just isn't about the mess. It's about finding strength and resilience in the midst of it all. We'll explore how health, fitness, and wellness play a crucial role in navigating life's twists and very messy turns. And we'll challenge conventional systems, because sometimes the most unconventional paths lead to the greatest discoveries. Join us as we embrace the messy, beautiful, and endlessly fascinating stories. Each episode is a testament to the power of our messy journeys and the beauty that emerges from the mess. So grab your favorite beverage, coffee, sparkling water, whatever it may be, and prepare to be inspired. Are you ready? Let's get messy. Hey, welcome to Everything's Messy podcast. I am your messy host, Sarah. Joining me today is JJ Flizanes, an empowerment strategist and creator of the Empowery Mind Network and a fellow podcaster, which I absolutely always love having. Welcome, JJ.
Thank you, Sarah.
So nice to have you here. So give us a little background. Do you have a messy story that maybe brought you to being an empowerment strategist?
I mean, who doesn't? Isn't life just messy? I mean, who has a clean story? Please show me the person who like everything has always worked out for you. Nothing is wrong. You've had no contrast. It's literally impossible.
I think I'd be intimidated to meet that person.
That person's lying. So let's just start there. That person is for sure lying or asleep in their own life. One of the two. So I mean, geez, the whole life. I mean, so I work a lot with core wounds. I specialize in helping people to rewire their core wound patterns. I've created something called a core wound map. And, coming from a core wound of one of them being devalued. And that's because they didn't understand me, not because they wanted to devalue me. I had a lot of love in my life from my parents and my family, but I'm the oddball. I'm the black sheep. I'm the weirdo. I'm the one that asks lots of questions. I'm the one that talks about things nobody else is interested in.
I can relate to that so much.
So I'm deep. Oh my gosh, Jay, you're so deep. When I'm younger, I was the old soul. I was, so I've kind of always either stuck out or been invisible in ways because people don't know what to do with me. I mean, my own mother to date doesn't really ask me any questions. She doesn't ask anybody any questions about like what they're doing with their lives, because she probably doesn't feel confident enough to have a conversation about anything like that. She is happy to hear about what's going on, but she will never ask me like how business is or anything about what I do. So, I mean, I don't even know if she knows what I do.
Sure.
Right. So, and it's not because of lack of love. It's just lack of confidence and understanding. So, yeah, I mean, my whole life has been the oddball. Then I got married, and my husband, now ex-husband, that whole thing is actually kind of what led me here today. I have the curiosity to have always asked why. Yes, in an annoying way, but not always in an annoying way. Like, it's always been internal. Like, I don't ask other people why. Maybe it's when I was little. But me, it's more like, why did you react that way? Why do you feel this way? Why did that person act the way they did? And I do have an acting background. And so that helped to kind of take that perspective and learn how to see from someone else's perspective, learn how to embody a different belief system, a different past, a different history, a different circumstance. And so that was very helpful. And then when I got into my relationship and we didn't see relationships in the same way. And I didn't know what I didn't know, but I am an ultimate fixer in terms of I'm a recovering a rescuer, but I'm a really great problem solver. And okay, here's my new problem. Let's solve it. And so I actually even started my own podcast to save my marriage. And it wasn't because I wanted to learn. I did want to learn. I hope it doesn't sound too bad. I did want to learn, but I had enough information that I had been studying up to this point, and I knew that he couldn't hear it from me, like in a conversation, which she's not supposed to. No partner, no child, no parent is supposed to be if you're the coach, they're not your client ever.
Sure.
That dynamic should not exist. I don't mean to be shitting you, but meaning it's not healthy unless it's asked. If it's asked for, that's one thing. But don't take the role of that you're the trainer. Well, I kind of took the role that I was a trainer. So, definitely onus on me for having tools that I thought, let me share these tools with you so that we can use them, so that we can be better, so you can be happier, so this can be better. And that was, of course, rejected at every level. So I started my podcast so that I could bring other people on to say the same things, so that he could hear it from somebody else, which didn't work for a little while. It did work. It did work for a little while. It did work because he could hear it. Now, whether he did or not, it's a different story. But he did hear it, and he did know. It wasn't my marriage and no relationship is ever a mistake in my point of view. We have divine sacred contracts, and this was a divine sacred contract, and it was supposed to sort of be the master's degree in what I am interested in, which is how the human psyche works and why we react the way we do, and how our emotions rule everything that we do. And so for that time period, 10 to 13 years, I really just went all in with trying to figure out how to solve the problem. And finally came up with it. I can't be the only one trying to solve the problem. I can do a lot of changing, and that actually will help. I have saved other people's marriages using the tools that I used. Mm-hmm. But at some point in time, especially when one person grows faster than the other person, if there's not a connection anymore of like how you look at marriage or life or relationships, well, then, one person is going to be doing more of the work. It was imbalanced. But I grew a lot. I've grown a lot since then. I credit my marriage for my success today, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be connecting with the people that I connect with, and people I wouldn't have the track record. I wouldn't have the efficiency that I have and the effectiveness with what I do. So, it was all good.
Yeah.
And it was messy.
And I don't want to say we like the mess, but we learned so much from the mess. And the ongoing theme here seems to be that as you went through that mess, you either learn a whole lot about yourself, and then through that, you find the strength to come out of the mess. And it sounds like you empowered yourself to come out and apply that to helping others, which is a really big message, I think.
So what is a core wound? So when you are 0 to 7, your brain doesn't have a consciousness. It is recording. It looks at life from a factual position. So no matter what happens, there's no observer perspective where we can decide and use different ways to interpret information. The brain goes, no, this is fact. So my parents, I was crying in the next room. My parents took an hour to come to me. I was abandoned. You're like, that's it. There's no like, oh, my parents were busy. No. I was abandoned. I'm not important. I'm devalued, whatever. And so the brain is recording all of this from 0 to 7.
And 7 being the age of accountability, is that why it's
consciousness?
Consciousness. Okay.
It's when our consciousness develops that we can have an awareness of our thoughts as not reality. And honestly, there are people, even like family members of mine, who I think it's their first time on the planet, in not in a bad way, just very young souls who do believe everything they think. And if you're one of those, let me just, not you, Sarah, but anyone listening, you will have many thoughts that aren't true. You'll have many reactions, emotions, and stories that you tell yourself and then react to that are just simply not true. But you may not be aware of that. And as adults, we have a consciousness, and we can become made aware of that. But when you're 6 and 7, you are not aware of that. There is no other reality. There is whatever I am experiencing in the moment is the story, is real, is the truth. And so that leads us to believe certain things, that you were smothered, you were abandoned, you are devalued, you were made to feel guilty, you were disapproved of, these are just some of the top wounds. And so these beliefs, and they become beliefs. And that belief is in your subconscious. And 88% of your consciousness is subconscious. So it's in the basement. You don't really know that it's there. Like you're not thinking about it normally, but it's running everything. And it's, again, why you choose. Because our caregivers, whether it be your parents or your grandparents, your aunt, your uncle, your adopted parents, whomever, they aren't you. So they can't see for you, think for you, interpret for you. So they are not going to be able to give you everything that you need all the time. And you don't even know what you need all the time.
Right.
And because you don't know what you need, you're ultimately going to be wounded and hurt. And then be looking for how to fill the hole, the gap of, well, I didn't get this from my caregivers. How can I get it from other people? And so your whole life becomes how to fulfill those needs through the work that you do, the partners that you choose, where you live, the friends that you have, the pastimes that you have. Everything is built on trying to get your needs met that were not met in childhood.
Wow, that's deep and messy. So as we talk about, go ahead. Sorry.
It is messy, yes. Again, so your show is messy. It can be messy, but here's where it's not messy, because I've improved upon. I have taken a core wound exercise coming out of Imago therapy. Harville Hendricks created a therapy called Imago. It's the best relationship therapy, hands down. But that it lives in that work. But I extracted it from that work and then used this to build an entire framework on how to, because when I did it for the first time in therapy with my ex-husband, and because I waited so many years to I should have done the work earlier. I wish we would have done it earlier. Wouldn't have changed the outcome, but I sat and I did this exercise, and there was a behavior that I had that I would do with my ex-husband, and he would say to me, that doesn't work. And intellectually, I absolutely did. I said, I know it doesn't work, but somehow I kept doing it. And so I'm like, why do I keep doing it? And then we got into this core wound work, and I did this exercise, and I just saw the pattern. It went all the way back to when I was like 5, 6, 7, 10. I'm like, oh my, that blew my mind. And I, in that moment, instantaneously stopped doing it.
Wow.
Because I understood it from a broader perspective. I understand it as a core wound. And I said to the therapist at the time, I said, why isn't every single person doing this exercise who's in therapy? It would streamline, take years off your therapy. It would direct you. It would give you a structure, a foundation, and a map, really, of what you're even doing in the therapy and where you're going and how do you know when you're getting better and what kind of things am I choosing to help these things. And so it really changed my life in that moment. And I started using it with my clients, and I've done events, and I've done one-on-one. I even have my own certification, and I've literally been working with this for 6, 7 years. And last year, and I fine tune it because I'm a Pisces with a lot of Sag, and the Sag just wants to get to the point. What is the bottom line here? So the bottom line was, how do I make this so user-friendly that it takes any guesswork out of it? And so I've created this core wound map. And basically, anytime you're triggered, you can look at that map and it'll tell you exactly why. And then you'll know what to do about it and then how to heal it. And so, yes, it's messy, but it's messy in the way that people think, oh, I'm going to go into therapy, I'm going to talk about my past and my childhood. Yeah, that can get messy and unnecessary.
Sure.
When you spend months or years talking about a painful story over and over again with no direction, results, new awareness, new interpretation.
Right.
That is messy and it's unnecessary. This core wound process takes the mess out of it. It gets you a diagnostic map of all the things. So you'll never again ask, well, why did I feel that way? Why did that person react that way? Why did I react that way? Why do I keep doing this over and over again? So that limits the mess. But then, of course, along the way, in terms of healing that, yes, emotions come up, and that's what people think is messy. But I invite you all to consider that your emotions are the reason why you do anything ever. And if you aren't happy, you're not doing well, you need to clean it up because emotions are important. And if you don't, that's why you're doing anything.
Right. But like you had said, a lot of times those emotions aren't even real. Or not that they're not real.
They're not the truth.
They're not stemming from a place of truth.
Right. You have a belief that was based on an interpretation, but it's your interpretation. It's not the truth. You have let's say you wanted your mother to give you warm, tender hugs and hold you, but your mother's love language was acts of service. So she made sure you were dressed well, and she made sure you were fed, and she made sure you were out the door, and she made sure you went to college, and she made sure she was always on top of you to get stuff done, and she would provide, but she never hugged you. She never touched you. She didn't tell you that she loved you. And you're thinking this whole time, oh, my mother doesn't love me. And you're feeling she's cold because you were unable to interpret that her acts of service were her way of giving love.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where an interpretation of my mother didn't really love me is wrong. Your mother did love you. She didn't show it the way that you wanted it to be shown.
Yeah.
And so that's where the mess, we get to clear that up. And then you get to feel the love that you wanted to feel because you understand it differently.
I love that. And so that kind of segues into, you talk about the difference between actual talk therapy and coaching, right? So why is coaching maybe a better solution than somebody who's doing the talk therapy?
Well, let me back up and say that I don't necessarily believe that all coaching would be better than all therapy. So let's put that out there.
Okay.
I recognize that
It's not an absolute.
Right. Because there are bad coaches and there are good therapists. But what has happened, I've been to, 6, and I only went most of the time when I was sort of at the end of, because again, I'm curious. I'm learning, I'm studying, I'm passionate about understanding all of this. So I would go to someone when I got stuck, and usually by that point, it was a really easy fix. So whatever the problem was, I would come in and, not spend too much time. And then finally there was a therapy, EMDR, which you do need you don't need now because there's apps and stuff, but you did back then need someone to do EMDR with you. So I went to look for an EMDR therapist, but I'd had a bunch of therapists that I just started to notice a pattern of how, like, definitely with my marriage, because I think we saw a handful of people trying to find like the right person. Then we found one person, and then it kind of went off and went away. And then again, through my show and through learning more and more, I'm like, oh, Imago, and then going to Imago therapist. And so for me, what I noticed was that therapy definitely was not effective for me. And so I did a talk called 3 Reasons Why Talk Therapy is Ineffective. It's a free class. You can take it on my website. And and then I created a course out of that called The Roadmap to Emotional Healing, because also the other thing is a lot of men and women who are more masculine or linear or left-brained, they want data. Mm-hmm. They want a structure. They want to know where they're going. They want to know when they're going to get there. They want to know what the steps are. And so many people just go to therapy, myself included.
So talk a little bit about your message. And one of the other things that I saw come out in your website was the emotions and how emotions affect healing and disease.
That came up because I started working with a bunch of different cancer doctors in a certain modality. It's an alternative to like standard of care. And I had interviewed a doctor on my show who talked about, when I said, so give me the percentages of physical and emotional. And there was another component, I forget what it was. Oh, environmental, physical, and emotional. And she said 30, 30, 30. Now, of course, she is a Libra, so it was a very Libra answer to give me. But I remember thinking, and I made fun of her because of that, but I remember thinking, I went 30? Like, you're giving equal emotion to physical? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't yet to hear a doctor who is in alignment with me on this, where I think 100% of what you create is emotional first, because it's energy first before it manifests as a physicality. And but to have her kind of refer that back to me and reflect that back to me. And then she was training other doctors. And I said, well, are you guys doing the emotional piece? Like, who's doing the emotional piece? And they weren't really doing the emotional piece. So then all of a sudden I started working with all these different doctors. And I wanted a way to take these cancer patients and explain those that were in this modality. This is not necessarily going to jive with anyone who's in Western medicine and believes that chemotherapy and radiation and surgery are the way to go. You need to have a little bit more of a holistic point of view, or a reoccurrence a number of times to wonder why it keeps reoccurring, to ask these questions. But that whole class, which again is a free class on my website, was for cancer patients. And I was explaining, but it's for everybody, because anyone with any kind of ailment or chronic condition, when you look at Chinese medicine versus Western medicine, and I'll just say Western medicine's been around about 200 years, and Chinese medicine has been around for over 2,000 years. And we look at meridians and channels and chakras and energy centers, and each one of your organs in Chinese medicine is where you hold an emotion, a specific emotion. So, but even before we get to that, let's just do this little exercise, Sarah. What happens to you, Sarah, when you are embarrassed? What physically happens to you?
Oh, sure. I get flushed. I'm hot. I just kind of want to curl into a ball, escape, go somewhere else, anywhere than that place. But definitely physically, I can feel the heat, and I can feel just all of the blood just drain out of my face.
Wow.
Very uncomfortable.
Yeah, sounds it. What happens when you get nervous?
Nervous, I'm able to mask a little bit more. I can try to push through, but maybe sometimes I can't, and it might come out vocally a little angry.
Okay. Anything happen physically for you? Do you have like
Probably faster beating heart, the palpitations, maybe sweaty palms, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, these are physical manifestations of emotion. So we all can understand that and we can agree with that, right? So somebody might say, I get a pit in my stomach, or I have butterflies in my stomach when I'm nervous, or back of my neck starts to hurt, or my lower back starts to cramp up, or I start to feel nauseous. These are other physical manifestations of an emotion. So what happens when we hold on to toxicity and anger and shame and hatred and rage for long periods of time? Well, those might not be as visible externally, but they sure do make a lot of wreak havoc on the inside. Mm-hmm. So we're not stretching here. Like when we say in Chinese medicine, so the lungs hold grief. That's where grief gets stuck in the lungs. Now, this whole channel in the body, you go and if you watch the webinar class on my website, you'll see their slides. So you can see how it all works. But when we feel emotions like air come in and come out every day. And our emotions too. We can feel all a range of emotions every day. And that's normal. That's natural as long as we don't get stuck in one. But if we're stuck in one and we pull and our energy and our chi and our blood flow all kind of get stuck in one area, like say, for instance, the lungs. I can't tell you how many male clients, personal training clients in the past, and when their mother dies, they get bronchitis because they have grief stuck in the lungs. Christopher Reeve's wife, she didn't smoke. She died of lung cancer. Why do you think she died of lung cancer? Because she had a ridiculous amount of grief that was completely unprocessed. There was never a happy ending. She went from this one life to a whole nother life, taking care of her husband and then died.
Right.
So she never smoked. How did she get lung cancer? So these energy systems in our body and energy centers and chi centers and in our body, when we get pulled in one area, create an imbalance and then create a disease. Cancer in in Chinese medicine is not a tumor. It's stuck chi. It's not some external thing that somehow made it into your body. It's actually your body that is literally stuck in a ball or has created something that looks like stuck chi. So we look at cancer very differently in Western medicine versus Eastern medicine and in holistic medicine. So when we look at what role emotions play. So even if you don't believe that, let's just put that aside for a second if you think I'm stretching you. There's a book by Dr. Kelly Turner, and her people just appeared on my most recent summit. And the book is called Radical Remission. Radical Remission studied 1,500 cancer and other terminal ill people who then their doctor said, all right, there's nothing else we can do for you. You can go home and die. And all of them survived.
Wow.
And we looked at why. So she did a study to take all the things that they did, and she compared all the notes and came up with 10 things they all had in common. And 7 of them, 7 out of 10, are mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Wow.
So there is data. I'm just not the data collector. I'm not that person. Right. I appreciate all the data collectors, but that is not me. I'm the implementer. I'm okay, now you understand it. Let's do it. Let's figure out how to get it into your life. Let's change your life, the way you think, the way you feel. So, emotions can create disease, and emotions can also prevent healing, because if you're stuck in so let's take a next example of, there are a lot of, especially even in alternative medicine and some of that protocol, you can get so in the weeds with your physical body that you're stressed. Like there's so many things you're doing in order to heal that the container that you're living in has stress. And that stress based on your workload, based on the things you're juggling, is also a place where we don't heal. Our body only heals when we're in a parasympathetic state, when we feel safe, when we're at rest, and when we love ourselves. And sometimes the root of cancer is really about not liking yourself, about really wanting to give up, and about a lot of hatred people may have in the world, and disgust and anger and fear. But if your container, even if you're doing everything right, you're eating all the right foods, you're taking all the right supplements, you're doing all the right modalities, but you're stressed about it, your body actually cannot heal.
It can't heal
in that stress.
So to accomplish those things you were talking about, feeling safe and things like that, somebody who's stuck in flight or fright mode consistently, they can't even escape that, even when they're trying to do the yoga or the breathing techniques or something like that, because they're just stuck in that state. What's their first step?
Well, it's not a step that everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I'm going to totally trust that and do that. And I have my own data. I have one of my clients whose doctor was trying to get her A1C, her glucose measurement, down. Yeah. And everything they tried, and she had cancer, and she did not do traditional therapy. I mean, she did have surgery, but she didn't do chemo. She didn't do radiation. She is 7 years post her cancer. She is worked with naturopathic doctor. She continues to work with naturopathic doctor. She has her labs all the time. She eats very clean. She's a super exerciser. She does yoga. She teaches yoga. She's super spiritual, does all the things. But she took my rewire class. And my rewire, actually the first one that we did early last year. And she was about the physical. I'm like, Jane, hold on, take a step back. It's not all about the physical. We have to look at the emotional. But the physical, I'm like, hold on, take a step back. And so we'd gotten to a place where she had a breakthrough. She had a breakdown first, and then she had a breakthrough. And her glucose monitor finally moved. And they had tried diet, supplementation, fasting, all kinds of different ways to get it down. It wouldn't move. And she had this emotional reaction and release, and it moved. And and so we have data to show that the only difference was that she was taking my course, and she was now in a place of relaxing a little bit and emoting and releasing stuck energy and emotion, and not being in this like hyper state of like, I have to heal, and being afraid of the cancer returning, and of being afraid of everything you put in your mouth, and being afraid of everything in the world. So the first thing, but I have her now. She's on the other side of this. I mean, she wouldn't have signed up with me if she didn't believe or know this on some level, right? Like, I'm going to be, for the people that are, for 90% of people with cancer, they're not going to hear anything that I have to say because they're so afraid. They're going to trust the doctor. They see the result. Lots of people go through chemotherapy and radiation and come out and they think they're fine and think they're healed. And so they're going to trust that. And I get that. But the thing, again, talking about this parasympathetic state. Well, first of all, go get the book Radical Remission. That would be the first thing I'd say. Go get, and that applies to anyone with a chronic illness. You don't have to have cancer to take these principles and run with them. But again, remember, 7 out of 10 radical remission concepts were mental, emotional, and spiritual. Cool. So joy, you got to bring more joy into your life. You should find ways to feel relief, to find ways to feel free, to find ways to feel inspired and hopeful. If your emotions are worry, if your emotions are anger and guilt and shame and any version of mad or sad, you're not going to heal in that. You only heal when you're in alignment with who you really are, when you're in a positive emotional state. And again, the bottom would be content. If you can get to content, we're good. But see, again, most people are going to say, what? Just feel better and I'm going to heal? I don't believe that. That's malarkey. I can't do that. But yeah, that's kind of like, that's really what it is. The body can heal itself and do what it's meant to do. It's built to heal you. But you have to put it in a state where it can do that, and it can't do it in stress.
That's tough advice to hear, I think, for most of us. Yeah, that's tough. Kind of processing everything that you've said. I've had a lot of information sort of blow my hair back and just trying to piece it all together. But I would definitely say the fight or flight, or even somebody in cancer, especially on this show, there seems to be those people that are desperately seeking the alternative methods. You know, one of the underlying themes of this show is bucking the conventional medical system. And I don't say that to be flippant or to say I know more than doctors, because I don't. But me personally, I am just searching for a completely different answer than the standard American cocktail that they issued me after my heart attack, which I had none of the things anyway. They gave me a statin, but I didn't have high cholesterol. They gave me low blood pressure medicine, but I didn't have high blood pressure. But that was the standard American cocktail. And it messed me up more than the actual heart attack. So I've been on this crusade to just, of anything, chronic illness, anything that you're going through, there has to be a different path. There just has to be. And while I feel like I'm a seedling soaking up all of these new things and finding these new things, I don't feel like I'm the only one. And so the work that you're doing, and especially in my audience, the people that are maybe just stumbling upon this and finding these things, I think it's so important what you're doing. So aside from what we talked about of just the certain thing of, you know, being in a certain state completely, you know, for a long time, what is the first thing somebody can do that's just seeking these different answers?
In order for them to,
I guess to be more specific, to have hope or understanding that the Western medicine is not the end all be all. And while I've said on this show before, emergency medicine, crisis medicine, obviously it saved my life. They rushed me to the cath lab. Like, there is a place for it, 100%. And we have, bar none, the best. But the maintenance of the medicine, that's what I'm searching for. And it doesn't seem to be in Western medicine.
It's not. Western medicine is not about healthcare. It's about sick care. There is nothing in Western medicine that will keep you healthy or get you healthy. They will get you out of dying. But, and again, and I agree with you, there's a place, there's a, if I fall out of if I'm in a car accident, definitely take me to the hospital.
Right.
But otherwise I don't want to step foot in a hospital. And it's not, it's because, I mean, I have story upon story. I have my own personal stories that I'll share at some point in time, and it'll be on my show. Most of my people know my fibroid story. I mean, I fought with my doctors about what to do about that. And it's a really interesting story. But I have a lot of physicians on my show, and I'll just mention one in particular, one of my favorite, Dr. William Davis. He wrote Wheat Belly, and then he wrote Super Gut most recently, but the book in between is called Undoctored: 6 Ways You Can Be Smarter Than Your Doctor. Okay, so, and he has his own podcast called Defiant Health, and I love that. Dr. Davis, and he's a doctor, and he will tell you, you don't need the doctors. They're just going to take your money. They're all about the money. And it's not from a jaded place. It's from, he was a cardiologist who then wanted to help his patients and stumbled upon the diet was what helped them change their body and make them healthier. And so he saw that, anyway, so so on a freebie, I'll pitch my show, and I've got a whole network. But I guess look to see what calls to you. I do produce 5 shows a week, not like one episode. It goes on 5 different shows. So I have a show called Nutrition and Alternative Medicine, but literally the same content is on Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. So Spirit, Purpose, Energy would where I would send people most, but because that's where you're going to end up anyway, if you like me and you stay. So there's a free resource. Obviously, podcasts are a free resource. You're here with Sarah. That's a free resource. You can look up my website, the emotions, how emotions affect healing and disease. That is a free 90-minute class that you can learn. There's slides. It's a video. Besides that, like the next step would be to get some help. Would be to, find someone who you resonate with. Find someone who your intuition says, oh, I want to work with that person, or they have information for me. And, let it be, I'll just say right now, I only work with people who listen to my show. So I'm not saying that if any of your listeners were like, oh, I want to work with you, I'd say, great, go listen to my show first and come back to me. Because that's how it has to work. Because if you don't trust me, then you're not going to listen to me. And I don't want to waste my time or your money talking about something that you're going to second guess me on. Please go listen to the show, at least 10 episodes. And then if you're still sure, come back and then we can talk. But if there's someone else that you have worked with or listened to or read or seen on TV or whatever, or someone locally, cleaning up your diet, learning to do some intermittent fasting, finding some joy and balance in your life and some rest, grounding. I mean, there's some very basic things that you can
grounding. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some very basic things that people can start doing. The emotional piece, though, I have to say that you need some help with. And I'm going to say, don't go to a therapist necessarily, unless you get it for free. And you found someone who's amazing and forces you to take responsibility for you. And then not just blame all the people in your life for making you unhappy, or because that's disempowering.
Sure.
That makes you a victim, and victim mentality is not where you heal. You only heal when you feel empowered. And I wanted to comment, Sarah, on because obviously I didn't know you had a heart attack. But what a great mess as a wake-up call.
It was yes. I mean, I hate that it took that.
Everyone's path needs to be honored through their intuition. And your intuition, your feeling, you have to trust the feeling of like, there has to be more out there. There is. You just didn't know what it was. And now you're really inspired to find it, because you weren't really asking those questions before. And then these things happen, and then you did what everyone else does. And then you go, wait a minute. And now you're inspired to ask different questions, which is now why you're here helping other people do the same. So it had its point, it had its purpose, and it was an important part on your journey in this lifetime and your mission and how you're going to be helping other people. So there was a reason. But I understand. And now you want to help other people. So just know, from everyone's path is going to be different, but that doesn't mean that the information still isn't applicable. So if I had to say get some help on the emotions, they are the most important thing. Because your body can heal itself. Will the physical side still possibly talk to you and tell you? Your body's always trying to talk to you. There's a book that I have. It's called Messages from the Body. It's my Bible, pretty much. It is an 800-page book with the psychological and beliefs of why any disease or physical ailment happens, from literally every tooth to every vertebrae to every finger to every toe. Wow. And it's the energy underneath. It's the energy underneath that creates this like the stress, like all the cancers are different. So breast cancer, the emotional root of breast cancer is feeling like you're overgiving. It's like you're being sucked dry. Or it also could be that issues around motherhood, whether it be your mother, like a really bad relationship with your own mother, or not being able to have children, or not wanting to be a mother and then you had children. So motherhood and then being sucked dry, over-giving, that's breast cancer. Any lower jowl stuff like ovarian and cervical and uterine, those are all in your creative space of your sacral chakra. And that's where your liver is, and your liver's about anger. And so this is usually like a very deep hurt from a male figure in your life, father, a brother, somebody. But it's usually an anger, like a deep-seated hurt that becomes this rage and anger. And that's the lower jowl uterine. It could be your mother too, your mother versus your father. But it's usually like this, you're holding on to this deep resentment and anger and blame for a long period of time. And that's what resides down there. Colon cancer is in the stomach area, and the stomach is how we digest life. Any stomach problems, whether it be cancer or not, you have digestive issues, how we digest life. So if we don't digest life very well, we probably have poor digestion, right? So the kidneys are where you hold fear. If you have kidney problems, anything with urinary tract, that's a fear-based energy underneath those organs. So, you want to handle that, because even though the physical is important and you do want to do some physical changes, because the other 3 things in radical remission are diet, exercise, and supplements.
Sure.
Right. Of course. But the other are all emotional, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So get the book. It's, I'm selling Kelly's book all the time. And get the book and then find someone who inspires you to start putting a plan together. And on the physical side, my advice would be to find an integrative doctor, functional medicine doctor, naturopath, or Chinese medicine person, acupuncturist, or holistic Chinese practitioner. And then on the rest of it, obviously there are a million podcasts that are free. So listen to them, find somebody who speaks to you, and invest, because if you don't, and you're trying to figure out all by yourself, you only know what you can see.
What you know. Yeah.
And someone else can see wider and bigger than you can. And you're worth saying, I'm worth investing in so that I'm better.
Yes.
Because I've tried by myself and I can't fix it. I don't know what to do. So get someone with a different, broader perspective than you, with a bigger, with more tools in their toolbox.
Sure. More experience. Further along on their healing journey, for sure. And one last question. I know we've sort of gone over, and I'll let you go, but one last question. Do you ever foresee in maybe hopefully the near future, the Western coming together with the natural to see the whole picture? Or do you think it's always going to be this separation, and we're going to be the ones to have to piece it together?
It's a little bit of both. There are that cancer doctor that I was talking about earlier, she is opening a hospital, and she is big on the data, like she's funding a hospital, and it's for, again, her cancer way that she teaches, and it is very integrative cancer. But in order to get insurance, not that she's going to rely on insurance, she's not going to, but she's very data driven, because she doesn't want to be, you're not going to win up against Western medicine. There's too much money there. Pharmaceutical companies will take you out in half a second.
Sure.
So I'm going to have to hold back on all the things I want to say about that.
That's a whole other podcast.
That totally is. Okay. So you can't go up against them and win. So you have to find a way to play nice. You have to find a way to be inclusive and non-threatening. So
there has to be a space for both to exist.
There is, but depending on who you're talking to, it is a threat to the pharmaceutical companies. They rule the world, and it's all about the money. So you can't. I mean, I just recently had 3 podcasts taken down off my YouTube channel, because now during COVID, I had a couple taken down. I definitely got my hand slapped a couple times during COVID, and those podcasts were recorded during COVID, but they're, all the censorship is it's been ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I'm getting, and they're not penalizing me because it's been up for years, but they're now deciding they're going to take it down because it's outside of the scope of what whoever's running YouTube and whoever's paying their bills. Right. So what I find funny is, we don't have free speech. Like, we have data, we have information, but we're not allowed to share it because it threatens, which is kind of good in a way. It's scaring them to know that people are asking different questions. I think the only way to make it come together is for us to boycott and educate and have everybody. It's like, if you go to when I started becoming gluten-free, I was clear that me paying more money for gluten-free things, I was fine with. And that you can't push against. Law of attraction says you can't push against something without making it bigger, because you're giving it energy. So I never said, stop eating wheat, everybody, stop making bread, everybody. I just paid more for and sought out and went to and supported. If we all stopped paying for something, if we all stopped going to a regular grocery store or didn't buy organic for one day, it would make such a huge ripple effect that they'd have to listen. If 10%, not even 10%, if 1% of the people on all their freaking medications said, I'm not taking these anymore, like pharmaceuticals companies would have to stand up, right? So I think that it's a slow, they are the big hairy beasts and they're going to be there. And you're going to have to be creative in the ways that you utilize it. You're going to find some doctors who are in support of both. I remember reading an article in a New York Times. I just moved from New York to California, and I remember it was a doctor saying, this was a long time ago, this is 2000, and a doctor saying, it was an article about how his patients would come in. He was a regular like GP. His patients would come in and they'd come and ask him for the diagnosis. And then he'd say, oh, well, I'm going to prescribe. They'd say, no, I'm going to go take care of it. Then they'd go and they'd do something else. Then they'd come back and ask him, they'd see him again. And like this, not just one person, but multiple people would come in, ask for the diagnosis, and then leave. They wouldn't take the treatment plan. And they finally had to say, why are you not taking my treatment plan? Why are you coming to me? Because we don't want your treatment plan. We just want to know what the diagnosis is. So he recognized that his role was really just the diagnosis piece, that people wanted to go treat in alternative ways. So there's enough,
especially in 2000, that was big, because I don't think that was as big as it is today.
Right. And, we're still feeling the after effects of COVID.
Yeah.
And all that has created in all ways. So you have to follow your intuition. There are times my body, when I went through what I went through with my fibroids, my body said, okay, you need some help now. And the kind of help that I needed 2 years prior to that was help I was told I couldn't get. And then my intuition said, go look at it again online. And now it had switched. It had done a 180 in 2 years. And now it was like, now this is the thing to do. So I went directly to the surgeon, it wasn't surgery, but to the person who did the procedure. And she looked at me like, well, wait a minute, weren't you referred by somebody? I said, nope. I just decided that I wanted this. And she was like, we have to come through a doctor. I'm like, why? I know that I want this. Will you do it or won't you do it? Anyway, it all worked out the way I was going. I wanted it to. And it's a pretty cool story that, again, one day I've recorded it, but I haven't actually ever shared it because it's going to go into my next book, because it's people taking their power back from their doctors. I don't care if it's an acupuncturist, a naturopath, or a Western doctor. Don't listen to anybody if it doesn't resonate with you.
Be your biggest self-advocate.
You have to be responsible for your own health. You have to learn something. And if you're not willing to learn something, then find someone you trust. But when they fail you, you can't blame them.
Right.
So if you care about your body and your health,
learn about your body and your health.
I think it's the most important thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have loved everything that you've said. And you've mentioned throughout the whole podcast, you have your podcast and your website, but just tell everybody again, if they want to work with you, if they want to find you, where do they go?
Everything is at jjflizanes.com, JJFlizanes.com. There's a bunch of free stuff like the classes we talked about, the 3 reasons why talk therapy is ineffective, how emotions affect healing and disease. If you go to the podcast tab, you'll see all the podcasts and you'll get the links for Spotify or Apple or Google Play or I don't know, wherever else I put them. So you can just find it. You can also just type my name in the player that you have, your podcast player, and it'll bring up all my shows. And and then I have courses. I have a live event coming. Can I pitch that actually? Okay. All right. So my live event's in October.
Okay.
It's called the Embodied Healing Intensive. And now I'm committed to doing a live event every year, but I was doing a live event like every 2 years. But this is moving into how do we tap into our intuition, into our body knowledge? How do we get into our subconscious? How do we release blocked emotions? How do we identify them and know they're there and then release them from the body? Because the body keeps score and the body stores all of this stress and emotions. And we can think about it in our head, but our body wants to tell us, but we're not paying attention. So it's a little bit of a different kind of event for me because that's where my audience is going to now. We've done all the analytical core wound work, and now it's about connecting the entire and integrating the whole system and being very deeply, intimately connected with your body so that you know when it's talking to you what to do about it. You can listen, you can take action. So but again, I don't encourage anyone to come if you haven't listened to my show. So first step, you'd have to listen to the show. But you can check it out. It's jjflizanes.com/EHI, Embodied Healing Intensive. And it's in Redondo Beach, California, October 4th through the 6th. and it'll be quite physical. It's very body focused. It's a lot of fun. The tribe is amazing. You will leave changed. You will have a transformational time because I've done enough now that I know I can provide that.
I can do it. Is it virtual as well or just?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Just live. Nope. Because this is about like physical. And while I probably could do some version of it virtually, there's nothing more impactful than coming together in a room full of very deeply conscious, highly high vibrational, committed seekers who want to absorb everything. Like you'll be changed just from being in the room for the weekend. Like you can't ever not be the same after you're in a room full of people like that. So,
well, there's definitely something to be said about actual connection. And I think as podcasters, we do try to connect so much, even if it is through virtually or whatever. But I think when, like you said, that actual true connection, standing next to somebody, hearing somebody's story in real life, all of those things, I think it's very powerful.
Yeah. And so just if you're looking for something transformational like that, or you've done a lot of different head things with healing, or you have a chronic condition, or you're just not happy and you know that you need something different, or you've resonated with me during this, again, you have to listen to the podcast first.
Yeah.
At least 10 episodes. You cannot buy a ticket unless you listen to 10 episodes and you're still 100% sure you like me.
Yeah, of course. No, you've been absolutely great. I really appreciated you coming on Everything's Messy, and I'd love to have you back at some point if you're
anytime, Sarah. This was a great conversation. I'm so happy I didn't have anything after our appointment. I'm like,
I know.
No. I don't understand people that do. I know I like longer form podcasts. I think there's much more to get out of it. You get the momentum going. You get depth. The short ones make me go, I don't understand. I don't understand.
No, I definitely believe there was depth and momentum on this one, at least for me anyway. And I hope you enjoyed it as well.
So. Absolutely. Come back anytime.
All right. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks so much for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. If you enjoyed the mess you heard here today, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review or maybe a follow, I will even take a messy comment, or otherwise, that would be awesome. Social media is where you can find me. I am on Instagram and Facebook at Everything's Messy Wellness. Website is at everythingsmessy.com. Email at sarah@everythingsmessy.com. Reach out. Let me know what you think of the mess. I welcome any and all feedback. If you think you have a messy story and you would like to be a guest on my show, you can find the guest form on the website. Thanks again for listening to Everything's Messy podcast, and keep it messy.